I woke up in New York like you did this morning. I read...
What are you reading there?
The New York Times. There's a paragraph in here. I'll read it to you.
Well,
about your dad's former Secretary of State, James Baker. In his 1995 memoir, Mr. Baker said he opposed ousting Saddam Hussein in the Persian Gulf War in 1991 because he feared that such action might lead to an Iraqi civil war, to criticism from many of our allies, and to an eventual loss of American support for an occupation.
Yeah. He was writing before September the 11th, 2001. And the world changed that day, Wolf.
But Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11.
Excuse me for a minute, please. The world changed that day because we had to deal with threats. No question, Saddam Hussein did not order the attacks. On the other hand, Saddam Hussein was viewed as a threat by the Congress, by the United Nations, and by the United States administration. And so James Baker was writing before the world changed. And we took out Saddam Hussein because he was viewed as a threat. He was a state sponsor of terror. He had used weapons of mass destruction. He had invaded his neighbors. The decision was the right decision. And now the question is, will this country and our coalition partners have the will to support this new government, a democracy in the heart of the Middle East?
You were thinking of dealing with Saddam Hussein long before 9/11.
Well, I wasn't in office long before 9/11.
Well, let me remind you.
I wasn't in office that much longer.
I'm going to remind you of an interview you and I did.
It was 9/11, 2001, and I swore in January of 2001.
When you were a candidate for president, you were still the governor of Texas. You and I sat down in Iowa just before the Iowa caucus, and we had this exchange. Listen.
We shouldn't be sending mixed signals, and if any time I found that the Iraqis were developing weapons of mass destruction, they wouldn't exist anymore.
Who wouldn't exist anymore? The weapons wouldn't
exist? The weapons of mass destruction, yes. I'm not going to... They just need to hear that from a potential president, that if we catch them in violation of the agreement, if we in any way, shape, or form find out that they're developing weapons of mass destruction, that there will be action taken. And they can just guess what that action might be.
The point, though, being that, at least to my mind, the weapons of mass destruction issue, in your mind, even as a candidate running for president, was a trigger, potentially, that could lead to war.
Well, of course, I've used Saddam Hussein for what he was, a threat. He was declared a state sponsor of terror, Wolf, by previous administrations.
But there are other countries that have been declared state sponsors of terror, like North Korea, like Syria, Cuba. You don't go to war against that.
Well, North Korea hadn't invaded its neighbors. North Korea is, hadn't made declarations of intent. North Korea is relatively isolated compared to Iraq. Every threat must be taken seriously, and every threat must be dealt with in different fashion. I strongly stand by my decision to remove Saddam Hussein.